Did we check the mic? Oh, very good. Wow. It's 1 minute to 4, so you can still chat. Come on in. I guess we do. Hello, everyone. I assume this is working well. My name is Barbara Bell, and with George Fry, we are working on the Puako for Reefs committee, nonprofit. So I wanted to welcome you all here, and thanks for attending. And the first thing is, we really appreciate that the church, Hokuloa Church, this nice historic church, allows us to have our meetings here because it has such a nice ambiance and they're very gracious to allow us. So thank you very much for that. Just quick, I'm going to be pretty quick here. You know, everyone knows where the bathrooms are, I presume. There's a sign up sheet on the back table. And oh, I forgot to introduce Jack Olson. He's our tech wizard. So thank you. He is recording the meeting and that will be available on our website. You know, don't go home and look for it tonight, but it will be there eventually. Is Lee here? Am I? Okay. Oh, hi, Lee. We believe Lee Mansfield from American Waters is on Zoom.
I am, but not that familiar with Zoom, so I couldn't find the unmute button. But yeah, happy to join. Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Lee. That's great. And so if you're on Zoom, would you mute? And if you have a question and you're on Zoom, would you do it in chat? And then we'll get to them after the presentation. And if you're in the audience, there's some cards at the back and it would be helpful to just write your questions down, or you can use the cards to make little notes. There's a lot of pens. And I would also like to welcome our esteemed guest from Carollo Engineers. Carrie is right here, and I forgot your name. Adrian, you might, yeah, you won't forget her name because I already did. And we are all looking forward to your explanation, and what they're here for is to give us the, to tell us about the basis of design report that they did for us. They chose our community to work on. So that's really very nice. And now I'm going to turn it over to George and he'll give a little intro and then we'll be on our way.
Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to see you. Pardon my attire. I've learned that my mental agility does not match my physical ability. So I took a little slip at Paniao the other day. But that's that. So what I'd like to do is just kind of bring you up to date on where we are with this great project to put a sewer system into Puako. We're going to have to make some decisions about how we're going to move our waste, what kind of equipment we're going to use, where it's going to go. And we've been bringing people to talk. We had Steve Colbert and Tracy Wagner come from the University of Hawaii in Hilo and gave a marvelous presentation. And one of the big takeaways from their talk was septic systems, cesspools, aerobic tanks, none of them really take anything off the reef. And so they decided, they claimed that to protect our waters and our reef, we need a sewer system. We need to take it all away. And they were followed up by Greg Asner, came, I think, 2 weeks ago, also gave a talk, also said that what we need to do is get our wastewater off the reef. But it's not just the septic tanks, the aerobic tanks. It's the groundwater. It's the flooding we get from up above, the runoff. It's the fertilizers we use in our yard. There's just all kinds of things. Overfishing is one. But the one thing we can do, meaning all of us, is we can control the wastewater in Puako. We have an opportunity to put in a sewer system and take it off the reef, clean up our water, clean up our coral, replenish our fish. So besides taking care of pesticides and all those kind of things, the biggest thing we can do, and we should be able to do it, we're a great community, is put in a sewer system. There's 3 parts that we have to deal with. Collection, what kind of a collection system are we going to use? We've talked about a low pressure system. We had a Renko come and speak about their pumps that pump just fluids. We have E1, which makes a grinder pump, which takes solid and fluids out. They're going to speak next Thursday here at the church, 5 o'clock. This will just be a regular habit for you to come every Thursday at 5 o'clock. They're going to talk about the E1 system. And then today we're going to hear about gravity fed system to a package plant. That'll be what Carollo and Carrie is going to explain to us today. So after we collect it, we have to treat it. And where do we take it? We could do a box plant, as again, we'll hear about today, or we could take it to an existing facility. And Lee's here today, and we've had great talks with the Monolani and American Waters. They're willing to accept our waste. They have the capacity. And this is a big breakthrough for us. So we thank you, American Waters, Lee, wherever you are out there in hyperspace. And the last one is, what do you do with the hopefully R1 water you get out of after you've transported your wastewater, you've processed it? What do you do with the result? So a package plant, I'm hoping Carrie will explain what you could do with it here in Puako. At a treatment center, they can use it to irrigate golf courses or landscape, or they use injection wells at times. So those are the 3 things we need to clarify. And to really clarify it, we need an engineering drawing, an engineering report. And thanks to everybody's generosity, we've raised enough funds, I think, to contract an engineer, which means we can get a report that would show us kind of a shovel ready on the ground, and what would it cost you and I to put a new system in our yard, because that's what would have to happen. So we're hoping that in the next few months, we'll be able to get that information together. I think it's going to take a while to do an engineering study because we want it to be pretty complete. But anyway, so thanks everybody for their generosity. And if you'd like to give more or haven't given any money, we have a website, Puako 4 reefs.org, I believe it is. And they have all kinds of ways you can donate on there. Collection system disposal. Support. We've had great support from the county, our mayor. We've had a number of meetings with Mayor Roth. They've all been very supportive. Ramsey, the mayor, Bobby Command, they've all been supportive. Cindy Evans, our councilwoman, has been supportive. So in that regard, we feel very strongly. The unfortunate thing is none of these government agencies are willing to give any money. So support's nice, but we'd like a little cash in the bank. Nicole Lowen, our state representative, we believe is going to speak here at August 15th at the church at 5 o'clock on a Thursday. So put that in your notebook. E1 grinder pumps next week, Thursday, 5 o'clock. And that's about it. So I'll stop yakking and turn the meeting over to Cindy. And Cindy, thanks for being here. Welcome. We're looking forward to your report. We're glad to have Carollo here. Thank you. You both.
Short. Thank you for having us. So today, as George and Barbara mentioned, we'll go through our basis of design report. So just kind of a quick agenda of our overall presentation. We'll just do some really quick housekeeping. I think you guys have covered some of it. Adrian will take us through the project background and some of the information on the basis of design. We'll also talk about the costs and a program plan. So I did want to try to frame up everything that we're going to share with you today. It is not to try to push you in one direction or another at all. We're just sharing information. And at this point, it's all fiction, right? So the decision has to come from the community. So everything that we present, you know, I don't want you guys to get the cost numbers stuck in your head and just like turn your brains off. So try not to get hung up on the costs that we present because they are big. But we will, you know, share information on our updated cost estimate. We'll also give some information on a program plan. You know, what you guys are doing is very admirable by organizing as you are, but really, you know, in a first world country, the common citizen doesn't normally have to worry about their wastewater infrastructure and to learn the different technical details as George just went over. Like most people don't have to think about that in their daily lives. So we'll talk about a program plan, some project ownership options. We'll go over some funding opportunities that might play a role and how that ties to the ownership options. We'll give an example schedule. And we are asking that you hold your questions until the end. So if you didn't grab a comment card, you can use that to jot down questions. Barbara mentioned those on the online meeting. If you could type them in the chat, my colleague Danielle will be monitoring the chat for Q&A, and we'll answer everything that we can here. And what we don't get to, we can answer in the future. So with that, just super quick housekeeping, please silence your phones. Save your questions till the end. And then when we do get to the Q&A portion, if you can try to be respectful of everyone's time and limit your time for your question and expressing your views, that would be great so that everyone has a chance. Mention the comment cards and use of the chat and emergency protocols. If there's an emergency, we're going this way and out into the open field, I'm guessing. And the restrooms are over outside and to the left. So with that, I did want to introduce our team. My name is Carrie Ishida. I'm the project manager from Carollo Engineers. I'm located in our Honolulu office. My colleagues joining me here today are Adrian Fung. She's our lead engineer. In the back of the room is Danielle Rastelli. She's our project engineer. And then we also have our technical advisor, Gary Dice, in the back. And online, I think we've got Ray Chandler Yao. So thank you, Ray, for joining us, the community liaison, and Shelly Masuda, who's our senior engineer, helped a lot with the basis of design report. She couldn't join us today, but thank you to everyone that supported this project. So the purpose of this meeting, really, we're here to inform. We're here to summarize the information for a new decentralized wastewater system for the Puako community. We're also here to provide information on some of the sewer collection, treatment, and effluent management options. We're not going to go over every technology. We did provide some good information in the report on different technologies, so I encourage you to take a peek at that. We'll also provide information on the potential future wastewater program for the Puako community, and just wanted to provide a forum for discussion. So that's the main purpose of today. What we're not here to do is we're not here to force you to a decision by any means. Everything presented is not intended to sway you one way or another. You know, as George and Barbara mentioned, you guys have to decide for yourselves. We're also not here to create policies, and unfortunately, we're not here today to solve the problem. But I think, hopefully by providing some of this information, that will help you to just have more information at your disposal to make a decision and solve the problem. So policies will have to be created by others, whether it's the county, the state, or other folks of, who has to connect. And solutions obviously are pending the community's decision. So I just wanted to frame up, what we're here to do and what we can't do through this work. I also wanted to share this is just one piece of a bigger project that we have. It's a decentralized wastewater pilot project. And the main purpose of that is to develop a potential roadmap for a new decentralized wastewater system to help support Hawaii's cesspool conversions. So Carollo is part of a team under the University of New Mexico Southwest Environmental Finance Center, who got a national grant from the US EPA. So our piece of that pie was $300,000. And that basis of design report that we're speaking about today was just one task. Other tasks under our scope are to evaluate potential partnerships like, the Puako community is doing in discussions with the county, as well as provide technical training. So that's a whole different piece. So we had to kind of check certain boxes with this grant and the scope that we had to provide. So we had proposed a broader scope to try to take things a little bit further, but we're doing what we can within the frame of our contract. If you want more information on the grant, it's that last bullet at the bottom. I also wanted to put this kind of in the frame of other plans that are going on. I think other consultants and the county have shared information for other plans. And so this graphic on the right is intended to put our Puako basis of design report into the context of all the other plans. So Carollo is actually working with the county on a broader county-wide plan as well, to develop a county-wide cesspool conversion plan, as well as looking at all the county's wastewater facilities to see what cesspools can be converted and connected to the county systems. There will also be recommendations for decentralized systems, such as we'll talk about today for Puako, but there'll also be recommendations for areas that need to be converted by individual wastewater systems, so at a household level. And then you've also heard and seen the South Kohala Community Development Plan that included Puako. So there are other community development plans for other regions within the county. And then the smaller rectangle here for Puako, you have commissioned studies by aqua engineers, which is great. And then our basis of design report kind of fits under that. So just wanted to give that context. We recognize there's a lot going on in terms of plans and sharing that information, but they're all kind of intended to fit together and kind of relate to each other in different ways. Just wanted to share that. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Adrian to go over the project background.
Thanks, Carrie. Hi, I'm Adrian. I will be sharing a bit about the project background information. We wanted to focus on Hawaii because it has the most cesspools compared to all the other states. There are over 80,000 cesspools in Hawaii, and they discharge over 50 million gallons per day of wastewater that affects human health, the environment, our plants, animals, and our groundwater, which provides over 90% of our drinking water. In 2017, the state passed Act 125, which requires all cesspools to be converted, upgraded, or connected to a sewer by January 2050. The Department of Health also worked with Sea Grant and the University of Hawaii to develop a prioritization tool that looks at each cesspool and categorizes them as priority 1, 2, or 3, with priority 1 cesspools exhibiting the greatest contamination hazard. The good news is there are many options to replace cesspools. Generally, there are 3. The first one I'll talk about is connecting to a centralized treatment plant. So these are your large treatment facilities that receive wastewater from towns or cities. The example shown here, the red lines, those are the sewer system in Kona served by the Kealakehe treatment plant. A second option that might make more sense if you're looking at maybe a neighborhood or a group of homes or a commercial area like a school, hospital, or shopping mall, those could connect instead to a decentralized or cluster system or a package plant. So these are like a smaller version of your centralized plant. Now, if you look at more rural areas, or if they're really far from a place with sewers, or it's just not really possible to put sewers in there, maybe due to the geography or topography, then your home might instead have an individual wastewater system. So these are your septic tanks, your aerobic treatment units, and leach fields. For our grant-funded project, we focused on decentralized systems, and the goal is to provide a roadmap for other communities that have cesspools and are interested in connecting to a centralized or package plant. We looked at different candidate sites, focusing on the Big Island, since the Big Island has the most cesspools compared to the other islands in Hawaii. And great news for everyone, we selected Puako for this study, and it was for a number of reasons. All the cesspools in Puako are priority 1. And in Puako, you have the fuel break, which provides a great opportunity for water reuse using recycled water. And there have been studies done documenting the environmental impacts on the coral reefs. And as we heard from Puako for Reefs, this community just has been great in support for moving forward with a collaborative solution to improve the reefs. And there have also been many previous studies commissioned looking at different conversion efforts and ways to improve the coral reefs. So the next couple of slides are just going to zero in on a couple of these reasons. First being the evidence of wastewater negative impacts on Puako's reefs. So studies have shown that the coral cover was reduced by 50% between 1970 and 2010. And in samples collected from the shore, Enterococcus indicated sewage pollution from the cesspools and the other wastewater units. And just wanted to throw in an extra slide, just highlighting all the great efforts that have been happening in this community. We'll be on calls with the EPA, and like across the nation, they know Puako. Like EPA knows of all the studies that have been going on in this community. So it's super impressive. So just wanted to highlight the efforts you've done in forming the nonprofit organization Puako for Reefs, reaching out to the community within Puako and also around the state, commissioning various studies, and also working with your local leaders and academics to get them involved so that they can play a bigger role. And also, as George mentioned, just pursuing funding, that's a huge component. And they're working with local leaders on that, and it's moving forward, and it sounds very exciting. All right, so now I'm going to go into the more technical part of the presentation, summarizing the basis of design. So we're going to look at the different components of what makes up a decentralized system. Just going into the definition a little bit more, you can connect groups of homes, 50 to several hundred. And sometimes this makes more sense because if you're looking at communities that are spaced apart, like I worked on a report in Puna. So if you have like Eden Rock and Mountain View, instead of putting pipelines between that connect the communities, it might make more sense for each community to have their own decentralized system. So you see here in the graphics, these are just different ways you can organize these decentralized systems. They could be just small groups of homes with a shared leach field in this case. And then the bottom picture, that's an example of what a package unit might look like. They're modular, so you can sort of build them up to increase capacity of your plant. Whether you have a centralized, decentralized system, or just your on-site system in your backyard, as George mentioned, all three of these will have three components: collection, treatment, and effluent management. So wastewater collection, that's just getting raw wastewater from your home or your business into a network of sewer pipes. And then the sewer pipes will bring that wastewater to a treatment facility. That's where you have your primary treatment, biological treatment that cleans the water. In this example, that treated effluent goes into an outfall. But as we know, there have been better ideas now, more innovative ideas of reusing the water so that you can conserve your water supply. Now, before going into all three, this is sort of an overview example layout of what we drew up for Puako. The green boxes, those are your TMKs or parcels. And then there's a blue or pink line running along the shore here in Puako and Wailea Bay. Those are your gravity mains or your force mains. And those will carry wastewater to the treatment plant that we just have a preliminary siting at the transfer station. At the treatment plant, the layout can vary, but it would be somewhat like this. You would have your package plant, that's where the treatment occurs. There's a control building where you just make sure things are running smoothly and you can tweak things as needed. And then there are offices. The treated effluent in our report talks about it going into a storage basin. And from there, it would be discharged to the fuel break to be irrigated. And according to the Hawaii administrative rules, you need a 100% backup disposal system. So for this, we assumed a percolation pond. Okay, now we'll dive more into each of those three components. So starting with the collection system, we assumed gravity sewers and pump stations. Gravity sewers, these are your most traditional, conventional methods used across the state. Operators, contractors, they're familiar the most with this type of system. And as the name indicates, they're basically just pipes sloped, carrying flow by gravity. So ideally, you would have maybe the road would be sloping towards the treatment plant. So the gravity sewer can pretty much follow the terrain of the land. But if you're in an area where it's more hilly, or in the case of Puako, where it's flatter, the gravity sewer is still going to slope down, but at a certain point, it's going to get too deep. And that's where the pump station comes in, where it basically pumps or lifts up the water to a higher elevation. And then the process starts again with the gravity sewer, again sloping down. And this continues as you get to the treatment plant. For the treatment system, we assumed membrane bioreactors, or MBRs. In the industry, these are accepted as producing some of the highest quality effluent, because we want R1 water here. So Department of Health, they have their different categories of recycled water: R1, R2, and R3. R1 is the highest, and you couple the membrane bioreactors with an ultraviolet or UV system to disinfect the water. And that results in water that we could use within the R1 regulations. In this diagram here, starting from the left, that's the treatment unit. So it goes through, the raw wastewater is brought to the treatment plant. It goes through a series of screens and tanks that provide biological treatment and filtration by the membranes. Then it continues on to the right side of the image. That's your ultraviolet system to disinfect the water. Following this, the effluent water now goes into a storage basin. Can be a concrete basin. And from there, it can be used to be discharged to irrigate the fuel break. And as I mentioned earlier, you need a 100% backup system, and that could be a percolation pond. Putting this all together, just showing you this image again now, you can see the collection, treatment, and effluent management systems in this map. And we believe with community collaboration for a decentralized treatment system, that should help to improve water quality. Now I'll pass it back to Carrie.
All right, thanks, Adrian. I have the fun job, the not so fun job of talking about the cost. So again, please look at this as just another piece of information. We're not saying this is the solution for Puako. This is a number, okay? So this is a planning level cost estimate. At this level, the level of accuracy is -50 to 100% to plus 100% expected accuracy. So you can see the total cost of 133.4 million, which is largely driven by the collection system cost at 112, roughly 112 million. And that's because the gravity sewer system is very expensive to build. It's a conventional way to build, and you guys, have lived through this water main replacement. You've seen what it takes to cut up a road and dig and lay pipe. It's a very expensive effort. So that really drives this cost up as an option. So think of this collection system cost as the highest possible cost. It's obviously not ideal. So other innovative solutions for a collection system may need to be entertained. The other costs shown, the treatment and reuse or disposal systems, are also included, and those add up to roughly 21.5 million. Okay, so how do we address this affordability issue? Because clearly this is an issue. And I will say this affordability issue is definitely not unique to Puako. This is going to be a problem all over the state with these cesspool conversions. And the challenging thing about this issue is it's just a really expensive way to fix a problem, right? Normally you have the infrastructure in place and then you have the homes, but we're doing a little backwards here. So how do we address this affordability issue? One thing to do is to investigate alternative collection system or project options, which you are doing by meeting with the Mauna Lani, by talking to these other vendors for other technologies. So that's great. Keep doing that. Can also investigate funding opportunities, which you're also doing, different financing mechanisms and ownership models. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the information that we presented in the basis of design report on funding opportunities, financing mechanisms, and ownership models next. So on a program plan, there is a lot of good information. This example is from the drinking water side, but some guidance on technical, managerial, and financial capacity. So to own and operate an infrastructure system, there's a lot of information. This is a whole industry, right? A whole other program that would need to be really built for this community to design, build, operate, and maintain a wastewater system. So there's some good guidance documents out there. This is, not for the faint of heart, but the main point of the slide is this: you need some support to develop a program like this. And there's resources and lots of great people in the state that can help with this. Okay, so this diagram shows some different project ownership models, and we'll walk through each line. Not going to spend too much time on this first line. This is really just converting a cesspool to an individual wastewater system. It's largely on the homeowner to go that route. But these other lines, this diagram's also, I'll mention this is included in the basis of design report, and this is walked through the text as well. So in this next option, this is showing an example of the County of Hawaii as the project owner. Oh, let me orient you to this figure. So this first column is the project owner. The next column is the capital project in question or of subject, and then the potential facility owner, and then the operations and maintenance, who would operate and maintain that facility. So in this example, the County of Hawaii could be the project owner, and there are things called funding districts, and there's two different types. You may have heard of them. There's a community facilities district or a sewer system improvement district. And with this model, the property owners within that district can pay a tax or sewer service fee, and that will help to finance the sewer system costs. So the difference between the community facilities district and the sewer system improvement district are the community facilities district allows for private ownership if the county council determines there is a public benefit. And then for both of these models, it is possible that the county can issue bonds in whole or in part by a special tax. We'll talk more about funding for this option in a little bit. In this next line, it's kind of splits up into two projects, and here's where we do talk a little bit about the model with the Mauna Lani versus a new decentralized system. So this upper path here is the new decentralized system within Puako that Adrian had walked through with this potential site for a new treatment plant. And then this bottom path is the option to connect to the Mauna Lani. So in this example, Puako could form a homeowners association, which could act as the owner. And then ultimately that ownership could be deeded to the county, or it could remain with the homeowners association. In this lower example with connecting to the Mauna Lani, you could also privatize both ownership and operations and maintenance. Okay, I'm going to pivot now to some funding opportunities. And these are just a few examples that may have a higher eligibility for Puako. There's a lot more information in the appendix of the basis of design report on many more funding options. So I encourage you to take a peek at that. But this first bullet here, US Congress community project funding and congressional district spending or earmarks. I believe you guys have already reached out to Senator Schatz and your US representatives. That's one way to go about it. So you request through Congress or the Senate. There's some deadlines associated with that. Water and wastewater projects typically have a 20% match requirement, and that can include state and private funds. One of the constraints is that you would need to comply with federal crosscutters or just kind of more requirements of the project. This next one, Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA, that is through the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. That's a low interest fixed rate loan that can account for 49% of the project costs. So the other 51% would need to be funded by other means. There are some hefty application fees that can range on average from 200 to 300,000 just to apply for that. And similar to the earmarks, there are federal crosscutters. Okay. For the next bullet there, US Department of Agriculture Water and Waste Disposal Loan and Grant Program. That's also low interest loan and grants. So the grants can be available, but it's generally tied to median household income. So those with lower median household incomes, would show more eligibility for grants. That is, they wouldn't have to be repaid. So the Hawaii County as a whole is not eligible to apply for this, but special districts may qualify, but that does typically tie to the median household income. So we mentioned the funding districts. There are some requirements for getting percentages of the community on board with each one. So they vary in percentages. Community facilities district, you typically want at least 25% of the district to sign on. For the sewer system improvement district, there's different levels, 20% or 60%. At 60% approval, that can be considered county initiated. The last bullet there, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, that's also a low interest loan. It typically requires a 20% non-federal match. We are going to watch closely the County of Kauai because they have received $1 million for cesspool conversions. So that's something to watch as a model to see how they distribute those loans. Okay, so some different considerations of these funding options. We have to think about who's eligible to apply, because sometimes it has to be a municipality, it could be a nonprofit organization, and oftentimes it's not typically the individual homeowner, but that has to be kept in mind. And sometimes there's a pass-through entity that's needed, whether it's the county, the nonprofit, some other organization, to get the funds from the source into the hands of the homeowners. So there is a need to fill that gap with some conduit agency. And some of these funds do require upfront cash or matching, like we had just talked about. So that's something to think about. And then the different funding options, it's important to think about what aspects of the project can be covered. For example, projects with a water reuse option might show more favorable for certain funding options, other sustainability components. And it's important to think about all these other requirements, right? We mentioned some of the federal crosscutters. There's just a lot of paperwork and tracking as you implement the project to maintain eligibility. Okay, so let's tie the project ownership to the funding options. So this slide here focuses on that middle path with the county acting as the owner through the funding district model. And so what's shown below are some of the different funding options that could apply. Each of these would need to be dug into more to see if they can apply. But some of the ones that we talked about, earmarks, WIFIA, USDA Water and Waste Disposal Loan and Grant Program, and then the two funding district options, Community Facilities District and the Sewer System Improvement District. It gets a little bit more complicated with the lower model with the homeowners association as the owner, but a lot of the same funding options could apply. There are a few unique funding options for the different pathways. So for pathway 4A, if you were to form a homeowners association, possibly connect to the Mauna Lani, it's possible to use clean water state revolving loan funds if you deed the facility ownership to the county and the county owns and operates that facility. And then there's also unique funding for pathway 4C if you connect to the Mauna Lani and then have a private ownership and operations and maintenance. Okay, so that was the funding portion. This is just an example schedule that we had included in the basis of design report, just to help the community think about how long this could take. So this is based on a sewer improvement district, based on that pathway, and assuming a design bid build, which is a pretty conventional way of implementing projects here. So just with each step, assuming there's about 4 years to form that improvement district, just about 2 to 3 years to manage the funding and figure that out. Just over 2 years to do the environmental permitting. And then really the longest timelines here are designing, constructing, and starting up the collection system and the treatment plant. So again, this is an example schedule. This is for a new decentralized system. There's ways to decrease this schedule. We did include some different project delivery methods in the basis of design report. So there's things called design build, where the designer and the contractor are on the same team and they work together, and they can work a little bit faster than a design bid build approach. There's also a model that's called design build operate maintain, or DBOM. So that's the designer, the contractor, and the long-term operations and maintenance all on the same team, all on the same contract. And there are examples for both design build and DBOM within the state. So those are ways to potentially decrease the schedule. We did also want to circle back and summarize the community survey that was conducted earlier this year by Puako for Reefs. So we had roughly 90 survey respondents, which is great. So just a quick summary of those 90 respondents, roughly 39% said they have an aerobic treatment unit or ATU. About 40% said they have a septic tank, and about 15% said they have a cesspool. Regards to the collection or the collection system type, roughly 33% strongly preferred transporting the wastewater to the existing Manalani wastewater treatment plant, and 20% were unsure or needed more information. When it came to effluent management or reuse, about 43% needed more information before they could decide, whereas 32% preferred water reuse of the fuel break. When it came to funding, 64% strongly support forming a funding district, and 20% were unsure or needed more information. So just kind of to sum it up, and not just the survey findings, but also some potential next steps based on what we just talked through. It seems like more information needs to be provided to community members to help with selecting the approach to the wastewater system. And specifically, additional information is needed on some of the collection system options, some of the treatment options, the reuse and disposal options, and then the process for forming a funding district. That's all the presentation content we have. That was a lot of talking. We're happy to stop talking and take questions.
You mentioned the pilot project. Is that something we might wiggle our way into?
So there's a couple aspects to that. So the question was that I had mentioned a pilot project, and can the Puako community get involved in that? So this whole basis of design report, it's really a pilot demonstration. So this basis of design report is to kind of demonstrate the process of, what does a new decentralized system look like for community? What does it take to kind of get to this point? So that's kind of one aspect of the demonstration. The other aspect of our scope of work is we did develop sort of a draft request for proposal, really a technical guidance document for a decentralized package plant that could be parked at a wastewater treatment plant, a regional, county or other wastewater treatment plant, so it can easily be plumbed up to demonstrate what a package plant looks like. It could irrigate, flower garden beds so that the public can visit the plant, see what that package plant looks like. Unfortunately, we didn't have funding to get it all the way to like design, construction, and running. But that's one other aspect of this project.
In Hawaii, has this ever been done where you basically going in afterwards and trying to make a sewer system?
That's a good. Okay, so the question was, are there other examples in Hawaii of a collection system being constructed in a beach community, basically after the fact that the homes have been built? Sorry. Okay, so Barbara said Keaukaha. I'm not sure. I have to see what other communities. I do know that there are many other coastal areas within the state that are in the exact same boat as Puako, with, whether it's cesspools or on-site systems right along the coast, that are going to have this exact same problem.
I'll just add, maybe as a suggestion, if you want to follow what's happening, the city and county of Honolulu, they're trying to sewer Ewa Beach, right? That's a coastal community. But but it's in the works. But it's moving through. But the goal is to sewer that cesspool community. Eva Beach, right? Kahalu. 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 Okay.
So city and county is doing that?
City and County of Honolulu are working on Eva Beach, and Kahalu is, okay, they're trying to figure it out. Kahalu. Okay, so yeah, both City and County of Honolulu then.
The reason I mentioned Carollo is I happened to live there in the mid-90s, and I got a letter in the mail, okay, you're gonna have to connect. And so they put a whole major line down. That was, that was just right. So exactly right. Then we all had to connect. Hilo wastewater treatment plant. They were just constructing another collection line they were building out the system, so to speak. But we don't have a system.
So this design study you did, what was the scope in terms of how many dwelling units or businesses were included in that cost estimate?
We looked at the numbers from the aqua. Oh, okay. I'm going to repeat the question. For our basis of design study, what were the assumptions used for the population? Is that okay? All right. So we used numbers from the previous report done by Aqua. They had current population and build out population. So for we used build out, and that was 600, about 600 people based on, I think it was 200, 300 homes.
Okay, so your total
Percent.
costs with a collection system and the treatment system was right at 140 million. And you're going to divide that out among 200 dwelling units.
Yes. Oh, here's the exact number, 268 dwelling units.
You have a figure for the cost of running the plant monthly, once it's established? And what that would break down to each individual homeowner to pay each month to continue service?
We don't, but that is something you could work with so we worked with different membrane bioreactor vendors. We talked to about 4 of them. So that's information that they could provide, like including power costs and stuff.
Yeah, so an operations and maintenance cost is a good thing to look at. You can look at, life cycle costs, right? So not just the capital costs, but also the long-term operations and maintenance. It is an important thing to consider that would affect your monthly costs. We did not look at operations and maintenance costs for this report.
Well, we definitely need that information.
Mhm. Yes.
So the community funding scheme, I forget what it's called. What's the name of it?
There were two,
The
the
district, not the sewer district, but the other one.
the community facilities district.
Community
Yeah.
Facilities District. So what is required for that as far as staffing and oversight for the life of that district? Because it doesn't go away, correct? Like it has to have a manager or staff people and HR and all that stuff, right?
I'm not sure if there are specific staffing requirements for the community facilities district itself, but there will need to be operations and maintenance personnel for the collection system and the treatment plant.
What about as far as the overhead general manager of the district? not just for O&M of the sewage treatment plant, but the person who's, responsible for the to make sure the financing is
Yeah.
coming in.
Yeah, so,
correctly, the accounting and all that.
so I'd have to get back to you on the specific requirements for a community facilities district, but in general, to manage the system, yeah, you'd want like probably a general manager that oversees all the O&M staff, right, all aspects of that infrastructure.
The question in the chat is the abandoned water line pipeline an alternative to digging new lines?
That's a good question. That would depend on the collection system technology. So water lines are pressurized, so they can be shallower. The example that we laid out in the basis of design report is a gravity system, so that would go deeper. That's something that could be looked at.
Next question is, using R1 to irrigate the fuel break, won't this just increase the amount of vegetation or fuel, seeming counterproductive? Is it possible to send the R1 effluent to neighboring golf courses for irrigation and collect a fee in exchange to help offset maintenance costs of the system? So question about the fuel.
Yeah,
And also about maybe sending it somewhere else to.
right. Okay, thanks. We had the same concern about if you're irrigating the field break more, does that mean you're gonna have to mow it even more often? So, yes, yeah. So Wailea actually has something called a living field break. And another example, so I tried talking to, I think it's HWMO, Hawaii Wildlife Management Organization. So they gave me a great example of what's done in the Waianae Mountains on Oahu. It's like Waianae Mountains Watershed Partnership. So they have a living fuel break. And what you do is to prevent the fires from happening or to mitigate them when they do happen is you keep the area wet. So you could do like layers of like wet lo'i, wet taro or dry taro. And you could also irrigate to get shadier trees, because what they found is like the fountain grass here, it dies out or it doesn't reproduce well if it's under the shady trees. So if you explore different concepts, you can make a living field break work and better mitigate or prevent fires by creating a wet environment. And then the second question was about, right, irrigating neighboring golf courses. Yes, that's a great example too. And that is already being done at golf courses around the state. Yeah, you just got to see where and how to get the water to which golf course. And there's a cost associated with that also.
Okay, my last question is, since your design was based on a gravity system, about how many lift stations did you anticipate? And are these, you've got 2 pumps in each lift station, and what is your alternate power supply for when the power goes out and the lift station needs to run? Backup generators at each station, or what's the whole concept?
Okay, for the first question we have, oh, it's not shown, but there would be, or there could be 3 lift stations in Puako, and that's assuming a maximum depth of 30 feet for the gravity sewers. So once they hit 30 feet, a pump station would go there. And then we're assuming 2 for Wailea Bay. So a total of 5. For power, I think, Carrie, do they typically have like backup generators there? Yeah. So I think what you said is correct, backup generators.
The question was about the cost and how it comes out to over 600,000 per household with our number of 268. We talked a little bit about that, but could you also talk about how that compares to other new community systems, what costs were?
I might use my phone a friend and get Carrie up here. So this is for the county-wide plan, we are looking at different decentralized and IWS systems and costs per lot or per household.
Correct. So as Carrie mentioned, we're doing a county-wide cesspool conversion plan for Hawaii County. And the options we're looking at include continuing on with the DOH-approved individual wastewater system, centralized systems, as Carrie mentioned, and connecting to an existing county wastewater treatment plant. And, you know, AECOM has done studies. They're another engineering company. Brown and Caldwell has done studies, another engineering company. And in all cases, generally IWS is less, if it's feasible. Where we're seeing others that may have to connect to an existing plant and they're far away from the plant, or the decentralized system, the cost per household are not 600,000. I mean, this is quite high, but they are, hundreds of thousands, 100,000, 150,000. They could be that much. So these are really expensive projects. You have to look at innovative ways to make them more cost effective.
Yeah, so again, I don't want everyone to get hung up on that gravity collection system cost because it's high. Let's be honest, you're not going to do that, right? That's a really expensive way to go. Look at that as the high bookend, and how do you bring that down?
Go all the way back to the beginning of the meeting when the gentleman was speaking and he mentioned that there's a lot of problems with nitrogen from our yards going into the groundwater and into the reef. And specifically talking about saving the reef, the amount of poison and nitrogen laid down in all the local golf courses around here are far more than anything we put in our yards. And that's been going on for years and years and will continue to go on unless someone stops it. So even if all this is done, do you really feel that the sewer system will overcome the killing of the reef? Or will it still be killed by poisons from hotels?
I can speak to a little bit. Greg Asner 2 weeks ago spoke to that a bit, and he said that by far the number one issue we have is our wastewater. And we also are very low lying, so that makes some of our pollution issues worse. But he believes that we can, yeah, it's a long-term project. I mean, he figures once, let's say tomorrow, we're connected and enough, and pretty much everyone's connected, everything's built. He says in about 5 years, you would see some serious recuperation of the reef.
With the gravity fed systems, I heard a number like 30 feet. But sorry if this is naive, but can our pipes go down that low? I mean, isn't the water table much higher than that? I'm trying to understand that part also, even though it sounds like this gravity fed isn't really the best option financially.
Yeah, so the pipes can go that low, they can go below the water table. There's different construction methods to do that. But you're right, it is very deep. And it's a very conventional way to build a collection system. So we're also doing work in Honolulu, and there are, it's a gravity system with some force mains. But yes, there is groundwater influence.
How stable would that be? Like, what if one of those failed? How would that, like, what's the percentage of effluent going in and like, would it be like an oil spill? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there are failures, pipe failures. Typically it's due to pipe age or other issues, roots can intrude on pipes. It happens. Typically you have an operations and maintenance crew that can catch that, repair it, divert flows until the fix can be made. Yeah, but routine inspections can help to mitigate that risk. That's part of the operations and maintenance.
So for online, just do we know whether above ground vacuum line would be cheaper?
Did you say above ground?
Above ground. Vacuum line.
Not sure. I think there was an Aqua report, but I don't think their vacuum line was above ground.
This is Karen online, and we spoke with AECOM today, the other engineering firm, and they did price out a low pressure system. And as Carrie and Adrian said, those pipes don't need to go as low, and they're also smaller. So it is cheaper to go with a low pressure system for those reasons.
Yes, there are cheaper options, vacuum sewers, low pressure sewers. There are other ways to do it. Yes.
The original system that we talked to, height goes, I think, 18 inches deep. We've also we abandoned our old water main, going to the new water main on the Mackay side of the street. So the Mauka side of the street, we have a water main where we can thread the sewer system through the pipe and thereby reduce the amount we have to pick up on the street. So that's an option we're looking at as a water department. It's very positive. It would save us oodles of money and make it very easy. So the low pressure system pipes range from 2 to 4 inches, so they're much smaller than the ground and much cheaper. So the grinder pump system's a low pressure system that we'll hear about next week and to see if they think they need a lift station. I think if they did, they'd only need one compared to 4 or 5. So we'll get more information on that next week.
So that's in the stay tuned category. Do I see any more questions? No more questions online.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We can get the slides shared with Puako for Reefs. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of kudos to this community for learning about wastewater. Like I said, the average person doesn't have to learn about wastewater, but just applaud the efforts that you guys are making and trying to solve your own problems.
I'll go those